Hello, and welcome to PCI Webinars. Today's webinar, Embracing Race in Children's Programming, with our speakers, Melanie Borski-Howard and Carolyn Valencia. They're going to take a little more time to introduce themselves, so I'm going to turn it right over to Melanie and Carolyn. Go ahead.
Thank you, Anne.
Hello, everyone. Before we introduce ourselves, we wanted to thank you for making time in your schedule and joining us today. Today, our goal is to engage in critical conversation about diversity, equity, and social justice. Melanie and I think it's important for you to know that we are coming to this work not as experts, but as individuals willing to create an opportunity for courageous conversations. We are going to do our best to try to hold the space for individuals to explore this topic together.
All right, so I'll introduce myself first. And first of all, I do want to thank you guys for being with us on Veterans Day on a holiday. And sharing your time with us. It means a lot to us. We're glad it means something to you. So again, my name is Melanie Borski-Howard. I was raised, this is my family. This is my mom above, and below is my wedding picture. I was raised in a very, very large family. This is my mother's side. So I came from a very conservative background. I was raised just very conservative. I was told from a, I was told from a very young age that mixed families wasn't correct, that women are made to give birth, and that's why they don't hold bigger positions, because my mom would always say that. And I'm so thankful for my education. I've come through a lot and learned a lot and continue to grow. And I'm just being a librarian, especially a children's librarian, and working with children, I've learned a lot. I still love my family, but I don't practice the same as they, but I love them and respect them. And so again, I've written a book on children's storytelling. I do story time still on Zoom. I just did one yesterday to 12 rambunctious kids. I love it. And I'm excited to show you what I have learned about talking about race to children.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Valencia. I work for High Plains Library District in Greeley, Colorado. So High Plains is kind of a unique library district, and it covers all of Weld County. We have 7 branch libraries and 6 autonomous member libraries. And so with all of that, we cover a geographic area of around 4,000 square miles, give or take a few miles. I am an outreach librarian with an early literacy focus, and I work in their MOVE department. So the MOVE, it has 4 sub-departments in it, and MOVE is an acronym for Mobile Services, Outreach, Virtual Library, and Events and Experiences. I can tell you that I am fiercely passionate about all things physical literacy and self-literacy related, and I explore that through like the healing modalities of yoga and mindfulness meditations. So I use these pictures over here when I do a story time about race. Melanie, will you hit enter for me?
I just did. Yep.
Oh, great. So this is a picture of my grandmother, Susie. And then if Melanie hits enter again, this is a picture of her mother, my great-grandmother, Virginia. And Virginia is a full Ute Indian. So I identify as Hispanic and Native American, and the pronouns I use are she and hers. So when I use these photos with, families and basically young children, I start with that concrete lesson of what is race. I then talk a little bit about my privileges in a real age-appropriate way. I tell them that I am an American citizen, I am educated, and I have a good job. I live in a house, and I have access to fresh water. And as we move forward in our webinar, we will explore a bit more about privileges. The last thing I think you should know about me is that I truly believe that all families should be celebrated and affirmed in the library. And we can go to the next slide. Here is our agenda. We have so much to cover today. So, you know, the why do we do this? We want to share with you the opportunities that we've had through programming in Colorado. We want to kind of talk about how to choose appropriate material, and we want to explore some resources, and then really some heavy lifting here with exploring our biases and our privileges. And so, you know, with that heavy lifting, we just have to say, you know, right off the bat, that this is uncomfortable. It's going to challenge you emotionally, maybe mentally, and it's okay. These conversations need to happen. So again, thank you for being here, and thank you for exploring this with us. So again, we wanted to model what we would do at, you know, let's talk about race story time, or some kind of program that's focused on race. Here is our land acknowledgement slide, and I will lead us through this. As we gather here today, we honor and acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne and Arapaho nations. This area was also the site of trade, hunting, gathering, and healing for many other Native nations: the Ute, Lakota, Kiowa, Comanche, Apache, Shoshone, and many more. We recognize the indigenous peoples as the original stewards of the land and all the relatives within: the animal nations, plant nations, insect nations, and stone nation. As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the ties these nations have to their traditional homelands are renewed and reaffirmed. Let us acknowledge also the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory. We respect the many diverse indigenous peoples still connected to this land on which we gather. We pay our respect to them and give thanks to all. So Melanie and I ask that you join us as we send these words of acknowledgement into the universe and pay our respects and celebrate these indigenous ancestors. The next slide.
So I'll address this first. I overheard my coworker doing a land acknowledgement as she started her story time for 3-year-olds, you know, and I just thought it was so sweet. She does it very simply and fast, but I just love we're incorporating more stuff like this into our story times. So this is the why we're doing it. We are librarians. Hopefully, we've got librarians in the room, and this is ALA. This is so, and I'd like to do a little background as to how Carolyn and I met each other. We actually met each other doing a diversity webinar, and I was presenting a drag queen story, how to do a drag queen story hour, actually at PLA in Nashville. And Carolyn was in the room, and I'm so grateful she's helped me with diversity, doing these diversity trainings, which you can actually access through PCI. We've done one for them, or I've done the drag queen one. But anyway, when we were presenting at PLA, there were actually a representative from the Office of Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services stood up and said, "We are here for you. This is what we do, and we will back you up. If you get any feedback or any pushback about doing these services in your story time, we will back you up." It was fabulous for me to have that, because this is what ALA does, and it's what we should do. And more specifically to children's librarianship, this is from ALSC, and I love this. If you haven't gone through the competencies for librarians serving children in public libraries, it is amazing. And I love that it says this passion energizes us to be innovators in the field of children's library services, particularly in areas of access, advocacy, outreach, inclusion, and diversity. You guys, this is us. This is what we do. So we're so excited to have you guys here with us, and we're going to tell you what we've done to make this successful for us.
So Let's Talk About Race. From my understanding, Let's Talk About Race is a national programming incentive being utilized throughout our nation. In the resource section, we've listed valuable and inspirational information on such programming. And the next slide, Melanie. So at High Plains, in January of 2019, we had our first Let's Talk About Race 1-hour storytime service. And this was done at the Erie Community Library by Becky Loughlin. Following suit later that August, we had 2 more librarians jump in. Another one from Erie Community Library. Her name is Kristen Jardine. And then we had a librarian at Centennial Park Library, which is in Greeley. So I was able to observe those 2 in August, and I got a lot of great ideas. Then in November, I was approached by an outreach librarian by the name of Amy Ortiz, who had created a rainbow storytime series where every single week they celebrated diversity and inclusion. So this gave me an opportunity in November to do my very first Let's Talk About Race. And then the next slide, please, Melanie. So, and as is the outreach way, I was approached to do a few more Let's Talk About Races. I was working as a planning committee member for the Martin Luther King March and Celebration in 2020. And we were a group that consisted of individuals from the city of Greeley, Ames Community College, and the University of Northern Colorado. And so this was just an awesome opportunity for me to kind of jump in and do 3 more. So I did 2 30-minute storytime services at the actual event. If you look at the very top photo, this is Amy Ortiz and I speaking at the actual march. And then on January 23rd, I did an hour-long program at a local cafe. So 2 more things that I want to draw your attention to is as we worked with our marketing department for this event, we created this wonderful postcard, which was really Amy's idea, this Interrupt Racism postcard. And so you can see that on the very left. And when I asked Amy, I said, how did you come up with such a great idea? She said that after reading White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, that she developed the idea of creating an Interrupting Racism postcard, because the author of this book discusses the importance of interrupting racism as white allies by recognizing oppression and racism when it happens, speaking up and taking action. So, always basically saying it's not okay to say or do things racist. And then Amy recommended that if anybody needs a little extra help with this, that we look into reading the book 35 Dumb Things Well-Intended People Say. And that book is by Maura Cullen. So at High Plains, we actually kind of got into a debate. Why did Amy choose the word interrupting? And, to demolish racism is just it's not an option at this point, but we can absolutely do our part to interrupt it. So then we can go to the next slide here, Melanie. And so a revival happened in May 2020 in the wake of George Floyd's death. I reached out to, again, our marketing department, and I said, all of these gorgeous images that you created for the Martin Luther King event in January, I really feel like we could bring them back and utilize them. And, because of, all the craziness that was happening at that time, the pandemic, in Greeley through High Plains, we were at home. There was no way for us to connect with our patrons other than connecting with them through social media. So we created these images, which were shared on our Facebook channel as well as the YouTube channel. And then we also made some really cool bookmarks that we have been distributing to book clubs, and we have to offer school deposit resource bins because we can't have the kids checking out on the bookmobile the normal way that they would. So that is kind of how we carried the message through. And then Melanie, we can go to the next slide.
Okay, so did you see somebody's asked the name of the book mentioned? And all of the books that we're talking about, everything that we're talking about here will be in the resources. We've got resources and sources. So not only the stuff we're talking about will be at the end of the slides, but also what has inspired us, which has been tons of stuff. And for me, it was Jessica Bratt's Let's Talk About Race at Storytime. So if you haven't seen it or gone through it, holy cow, it's a fabulous, fabulous webinar. Jessica Bratt was so inspiring, and she is the one that inspired us to start presenting race in story time. So, and then also I'd like to just acknowledge Carolyn for what she just presented just now. She has received a major Rising Star Award from the Colorado State Library. She is amazing. And you just got all your books approved, Carolyn?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Melanie. Yeah, we just got funding from our foundation for my next, my next program with this conversation. So thank you so much, Melanie. That's so kind of you.
It was so cool. Yeah. During it at the conference we presented this at, she had to get up and accept the award, and it was just so exciting that she won the Rising Star Award for all this that she's doing. So it's fabulous to work with her. She's a powerhouse, I tell you. So again, just talking about Jessica Bratt.
Stop you guys for 1 second.
Oh, yeah.
There are a couple of questions you might want to get to. That somebody asked the name of the book you just mentioned.
So, Anne, do I type that in the answer area?
No, you just say it.
Oh, okay. So basically, real quick, it is 35 Dumb Things Well-Intended People Say. And then it is by Maura Cullen, Cullen. And then with the land acknowledgement, I would recommend you do it all the time. You model that. And like Melanie says, she has a coworker who's just super quick about it. You know, it could just be this, again, this gratitude and this just basically naming who was there and who helped, you know, kind of create this community.
Right. And I have to tell you too, the first few times we did it, we definitely had people roll their eyes. It was infuriating to me, but the more people, it's beautiful, and you don't need to do the whole big one like we did today. All you do is just acknowledge the land that we're on, and it just gets the kids thinking, you know.
And you do it. I'm sorry, and you just do it anyway. You have done the work where you're not emotionally reacting to somebody else's emotions, right? You just do it anyway.
Yeah, so great question. I mean, and keep them coming. So this is where I learned about this. The academic side of me always wants to study. So I checked out this book, which was suggested from Jessica Bratt and from the RaisingRaceConscious.org, which again, all of these will be at the end. All of these titles and everything will be at the end. But this book blew me away. The First Star, How Children Learn Race and Racism. And this specifically, they go on and on about how young children they don't understand social concepts, especially at a young age. And this is especially from like 2 to 6. They really don't understand it until elementary school age. They come to their own conclusions if we do not speak up for them. They will come to their own conclusions. So living in a place like Boulder, where we do not have many people of color, we find it very, very important to present race in a positive and affirming manner. And I'm going to tell you how we do that. So what one of the presentations that we did was we just finished our One Book, One Boulder, which every year Boulder chooses a book to present. And this year it was this. And So You Want to Talk About Race, which was a phenomenal book, hard book to read, but great. And it has been very eye-opening, especially for Boulder. We tend to be, we're a progressive town, but not very racially diverse. But so we presented Talk About Race with Children, Picture Books as Conversation Starter. This again is if you'd like to watch this, Janet Damon is a powerhouse too. She was born by her father was African American, her mother was Korean, and she has so much insight. And she presented this with us, and man, I was blown away by what I learned. Another thing that how we started doing race in story time was the studying of raceconscious.org, which is specifically raising race-conscious children. And it's a fabulous blog to give you input as to how to talk to your kids about race. They will actually do one-on-one workshops with you, with parents, with educators. They're fabulous. But this blew me away. How many of you have read Brown Bear, Brown Bear? I have read it 40,000 times. I can recite it verbatim. I do it jokingly, with the kids. I'll be like, it's a purple polka dotted bird, and they think that's hilarious. But this blew me away when I read this blog, that the goal of colorblindness may be well-intentioned, that race shouldn't matter. But the fact is that race does matter. Yeah, and so they were saying that if by being race conscious, we can acknowledge our white privilege, stand up and we can do our part against undoing racism. Now, you guys, as I'm talking to you right now, as librarians, what is our field? Our field is me. Our field is what? 95% white females. This is us. So this is another thing that really spoke to me as I was studying this. I was like, holy cow, who's going to do this work? We have to do this work. It is up to us as librarians, and with the partnership and the camaraderie of people like Carolyn and like Janet Damon, and we can find these people, but really it's up to us. We have to do this work. It's meant to be. So Brown Bear, Brown Bear, we have a fabulous page at the end that I have glossed over so many times. How many times do we talk about the color of the animal, but we don't talk about the kids' color of their skin? And it's easy. It's just like a literacy tip. That's what Jessica Bratt said. Just put it like a literacy tip. So basically on this last page that I'm showing you right here, oh my gosh, look at this beautiful boy in the middle. He's got darker colored skin. Isn't he beautiful? And look at the little girl with white skin and the blue eyes looking at him. I think she likes him, huh? Yeah. And so something just as simple as that. That's all really that you have to do. We started implementing this and found out that it is really, really easy, but it can be tricky too. So I just kind of wanted to show you a little bit how we do this. Sometimes just picking the right book can make it very easy. And like I say, when I am talking about race and story time, I don't do it with every book. I always just, like I say, like a literacy tip, I just kind of throw it in there. And then always I have a parent thank me for doing it. I'm just shocked at how people really, they really like us doing it. So again, me reading a book. So I'm bummed we don't have video. So, because I could show, but I'm going to try to just talk through it because it's just audio. So these are some very, very simple books that make it so, so simple, and beautiful books. The books that are coming out now are great. If you're familiar with Parker Looks Up, it's actually, and I rarely buy a children's book because I have access to the library, but I purchased this. I love Parker Looks Up. And also this one down in the corner, the Marvelous Marvelisa, which is a beautiful story about a family. And it starts saying, we have all the colors in the world. There are so many colors. It's told from the little girl's perspective. And then she goes into how her parents are different colors. And that's what makes their family beautiful. Where are you from is a great, the little girl always gets asked because she's mixed race where she's from. And the grandpa says, it ends by saying, you're from my heart. It's beautiful that we're not worried because they are from all over. Color of Us is an old classic by Katz, But I would just like to, so there's so many easy ways to do it because the books speak for themselves. Parker Looks Up is a perfect example. So here is the book Parker Looks Up, and here is actually from the end, it was highlighted on NPR, and you can see Parker, the little girl. This is actually a own voices story of a mother that takes Parker to, like, literally goes through this and has this fabulous, oh, dang it, sorry guys. So I'm just gonna paraphrase the book. When I read this book, I just go step by step through it. And basically the mom is saying, it's raining outside. What are we gonna do? I think we should go to the library. So they put on their shoes, they put on their jackets, and they go to the museum. And the museum is just beautiful. So they just tiptoe through the museum and they show all the different paintings that the children see. So as I'm reading this, they go to the museum, and then we're going to go down to the one with Native Americans. And I would say, oh, look at this beautiful picture of all these beautiful people with feathers on their heads and beautiful dark skin. Their skin's a little bit lighter than Parker's. Parker's is a little bit darker, but all the different shades on their faces, wow, they look so strong and beautiful. And then we go to the next page with the flowers, and wow, it looks like the flowers are coming out of this beautiful man picking at the flowers. Isn't it pretty? And then there's the aha moment, which is this last page where Parker looks up and she sees the portrait of Michelle, and she says, "Who is that?" And oh my gosh, you guys, if you've read this book, this is such an aha moment. She says, "Who is that?" And she looks at her and she says, "She's got the same color skin as me. She had the same look as me and the same hair as me. Who is she?" And the next page, it goes on about how she's a mother, how she's a educator, she's inspirational, all the different things that Parker can be. And so again, it makes it easy. Right then in the book, it talks about skin color, and it just makes it so easy. So books like these are so fun to do in your story time. You get good at them, kids love them, and it's a great way to incorporate race. Then we get to the challenging books. So again, this has been something I go over and over with how to incorporate talking about race with the more challenging books. And there's a lot of ways we can do it. I mean, really, you can pick any book to talk about social injustice. This middle one, dinosaurs. Why are all, you know what, I recognize that you love dinosaurs, don't you? But do you ever notice that there's so many T-Rexes? And they're so big and powerful. Like, what do you think about the littler dinosaurs? How come they don't get put in books very much? Madeline is another one that gets, it's our classic first strong girl children's book. But I always am like, wow, you know what? This was set in France. And I know there's lots of different colored people in France. And everyone in Madeline just has white skin. Something as simple as that. And then we get to books like If I Ran the Zoo by Dr. Seuss, and this does get to be very challenging because, these classics, what do we do? And if you've attended the webinar, which discussing challenged classic books is, again, the webinar is at the end of this session if you'd like to watch it. This was at PLA and I attended it and I watched it twice, actually. It was very interesting. And the webinar actually goes through these people. The people get so offended by these books, they decide they want to pull them from their library. And the whole webinar is addressing these books with these images that we're looking at right now and how they felt like they should pull the books from the library. So again, when I'm doing a story time, or if I would not do this book in a story time, but if I had a child that wanted to read it, and I was reading them side by side and I get to these pages, I would say, I'm not going to censor the book. I don't do that, but I'm going to say, this makes me sad. This makes me sad. This isn't the way that people in Africa looks. And Dr. Seuss was not thinking, like, I don't think he was representing them very well. Yeah, but this is just silly to me, that it makes me feel bad. And that's just how we address stuff like this. And again, you can learn tons and tons of stuff from the people that we have mentioned too. So I've told you some of my favorites. So now I'm going to give it back to Carolyn. Again, if you have any questions about how I'm presenting race in story time, please let me know. I'd love to address them. And Carolyn, why don't you take it from here?
Okay, and so we do have some great questions. So just briefly, we're asking, someone is asking about more guidance for the land acknowledgement, and I saw that somebody else had posted a number to call, and I love that. So my recommendation is reach out to Melanie or I. We will have our emails available at the very end, and we will figure it out together, because again, I want to empower you to just do it. Oftentimes we are our biggest challenge. So just getting past that and just doing it. And then we have a really good question from Mark about when bringing up skin color or possibly hair or other physical features, how do we navigate what the kids are assuming about the book and the characters? So my answer here is let them be curious. And what I like to do is, yes, I love to celebrate diversity, but I also like to talk about how differences are good. They are not, weird is not, does not equal different. So I make it a point to say, even for myself, do I have the same hair as this child in the book? And the kids will say, no. I work a lot with Head Start kids. And, I'll say, but my hair is still good, right? You like my hair? And it just puts it in a very easy way for them to connect with that. And then I have to do some self-reflection there. Am I uncomfortable? My other thought, Mark, is make it a point to use own voice books. So what that character is. Like I've heard a lot of people kind of fret about using books that have, a child on it, but it really is more of like a cartoon child. It doesn't really show that the features so well. So I would say, as you explore, as we explore these resources, the Diverse Book Finder database, that's a great place to start. Or, you've got your Embrace Race website, or Raising Conscious Kids. They are amazing with highlighting own voice authors. So how did the land acknowledgement idea happen? I don't know. Somebody brilliant basically did it. And now we're all just woohoo, and this is how we kind of grow as a group, right? I had no idea there was a phone number that you could text that would tell you, oh, in this area, this is the native or indigenous people. So real quick, I want to blast through this because we have, again, that fun, uncomfortable growth that we want to do at the end of this. When I observed the story times, the Let's Talk About Race story times, a book that was predominantly used is called, here it comes, All the Colors We Are, The Story of How We Get Our Skin Color. And just the author is Katie Kissinger. So this is a bilingual nonfiction picture book, All the Colors We Are, by Katie Kissinger. This is a great book. It offers a lot of good entry points about different skin colors. It's easy. It doesn't make anybody feel uncomfortable. However, I wanted to steer away from the STEM approach, and discussing melanin. And I really wanted to discuss more the racial injustices that folks experience, especially when they're different. So if you are not familiar with this book, These Hands, by Margaret H. Mason, that is a great book because in a very age-appropriate way, it's going to talk about how, grandfather had these wonderful hands and they could do everything. They could play the piano, they could throw a baseball, yet these hands were not allowed to build or to bake the bread at the Wonder Bread factory that he worked at. So it's a great way to start this conversation and build the empathy muscle, right? This like tiny little muscle for kids and sometimes adults, and we're building the muscle. I utilized crayons, multicultural crayons, and we did a craft where the kids at the end got to build a person. Another book that is probably more appropriate for school-aged kids is Not My Idea. And that is, man, that book packs a powerful punch. I have not yet figured out how to use it for pre-K. And then, of course, the ever wonderful Not Quite Snow White. If you have not seen that book, go ahead and check it out. So all of those books are great. Oh, also one other thing I want to bring your attention to, Katie shares Stories, Songs, and Stretches. Now this is a kind of it's a certification for us library folks that want to bring more physical literacy, yoga-inspired movements to our story times. Katie is a huge advocate for diversity. In her Storytime template, she has a section there that basically is like, how will you intentionally bring diversity into your Storytime? Through Katie's program, I first learned of the Diverse Book Finder database. That database is magic. It is, you want to read a book that's diverse, but it's similar to Old MacDonald Had a Farm, that's the place you go. Kidding Around Yoga is also very, very focused on physical literacy and yoga. But the wonderful thing about Kidding Around Yoga is that they have a justice task force. So they are tackling issues of racism, cultural appropriation, and they are talking about, the oppression that people face all around the world. And so I admire companies like this, and I look to them for inspiration and for knowledge. I educate myself as I read more about what they're doing to embrace diversity and inclusion. So, wow, lots of great questions now. So, Melanie, maybe you could look at those questions and then we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, I cannot see the questions.
Okay,
so Anne, can you ask us some of those questions? Can you see them?
I can see them. Could you share the Storytime template with the group? I will reach out to Katie Share because this is offered through, what is it, Library Juice? And I will see if that is something that's appropriate that I can do. I can share my outreach Storytime template, which is similar to Katie's. So I can definitely do that. And then
I don't use a template. And so I'm like, what do you mean by Storytime template? You mean like my scripts?
No,
I'm assuming
I use a template that's like a planner. So when I'm training my like the paraprofessionals that have never done a story time before, I say, you do an intro song, you do the first book, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So let's go to the next slide because I feel like, okay, so here's our heavy lifting, kind of the uncomfortable growth part of our webinar. And so as we dive into this, we want to really encourage you to do it with mindfulness. And that is such a buzzword right now. But, the best way that I've ever heard this described is the act of paying attention on purpose, and then without judgment, with curiosity, and a little bit of humor. So again, I want to make it very clear. I find nothing humorous about racism. When I say humor, I'm also talking about like Maitri, which is basically the unconditional friendship with yourself, right? You are not judging the thoughts that you have or the feelings, but you're looking at them, in a very curious way with a lot of unconditional love for yourself. Okay, next slide. Okay, so Melanie and I both wanted to say, this work is challenging. It's right off the bat, it's not going to be comfortable. You're gonna experience just feelings and And so the way that we approach this is these are the steps that we really kind of focused on. So critical self-reflection, right? You start with yourself, and it's hard and uncomfortable, and these are 3 easy steps, right? You identify an important question and reflect, right? Are you an ally? Why not? And then you, again, with that non-judgment and that unconditional friendship, you kind of explore that. You choose a method to do this kind of critical self-reflection, like whether you want to mindfully walk, run, sit, I don't know, maybe it's reflective journaling, but you are basically, this provides an opportunity for you to slow down and process, all right? Before we can help children navigate this, we have to process our own thoughts and feelings, right? And the next thing is, I recommend you schedule a time. If you are like me, you are, blazing through your day. And if you can schedule a time, this will help you be more accountable to practicing these essential skills. And then you, just like the quote by Maya Angelou, then you kind of start this transformation, right? And is it pretty? Is it comfortable? Is it fun? No, but you are really growing, as a human being, and building your empathy muscle. So knowledge building is next. I want to encourage that you find long-term resources. It's not a one program, one training kind of thing. You want to commit to action, any action, and you want to practice. So this goes back to the land acknowledgements, right? My next step is creating a family book bag, pulling in a facilitator, whether it be a courageous conversation facilitator, and doing this for a 3-month series. I just got funding for this, and then I'm hoping that instead of for 3 months, we do it for a year. But then we would need to find more funding, which I think it's out there. I think there's a lot of grants that support social justice. So I want to encourage you to maybe follow some activists on social media. And believe me, I know social media has its own issues, but I will tell you that these activists, they will inform, they will challenge, and they will educate. And then you can use those posts as conversation starters. So understanding that these conversations will be incomplete and imperfect and uncomfortable, understand that there needs to be a lot of these types of conversations everywhere. Diversity talks, get talking and find your support system and ally up, right? You want to, I want to encourage you to do deep listening. I mean, deep listening is a superpower. We are listening to understand, not to respond. And we want to cultivate stories of resilience, right? We want to challenge the default of white, and we want to intentionally use these resources that feature diversity. And I have in my notes, we do this when it's appropriate. We make it appropriate with intentionality. And make it okay to point out racial differences. Respect curiosity, cultivate some curiosity of your own, especially like when you're saying, how do we navigate what the kids are saying? We have to say, okay, why am I triggered by that? Why is that bringing up an uncomfortable feeling right now? And then you have to say, it's okay for me not to know the answer. And, when Melanie and I had done some training, with a Queer Endeavor. This is a great organization that helps support the LGBT plus community. They talked about an acronym called CAM. All right, so there's a mistake made. Feelings are hurt. You want to practice CAM. C is correct. A is apologize, and M is move on. Right. And then know that even though you made a mistake, you are not the mistake. You made a mistake, right? There's no shame in that. If you are doing this work with sincerity intentionality, and advocacy, you are being successful. And then, ask
Yeah.
yourself. Go ahead.
Carolyn, if I can jump in here too, we've been doing Race and Storytime now for 2 years, and I have made plenty of mistakes. And the CAM is really good. Correct, accept, and move on. That's what it is, right? C, correct.
Apologize. So you're
yes.
so you're acknowledging it when you correct it. Oh,
Right. Yeah. And I have like blurted out like incorrect things or called somebody incorrect things. I had a lady say she doesn't like the term chocolate when I'm saying this is a chocolate colored skin. And, even though I'm like, well, I say, I apologize, I won't use that with you. And just then I create a conversation going, what skin color would I like to, would you like to see me use? So again, just like creating a conversation around it.
Hey, Melanie, real quick. So Mary, there's a person named Mary who offered a wonderful question about saying, don't we have to be careful with highlighting that we are different without bringing we're the same also? Well, you know what? We are different though, Mary. And I mean that with so much respect. And I want to celebrate those differences, because what I believe is necessary in our world is tolerance. We don't have to, agree, and we don't have to be totally on the same page all the time, but we have to tolerate each other. And I think that librarians especially, or, you being the role model for your grandchildren, we have to show this civil discourse, right? Because we are different.
Yeah, and I do get that too, that people saying it's othering, but you just have to be intentional about it and to say, and again, I was told by a preschool person, a person that pays me to do story times at preschool, to not do race and story time, that they believe that we should judge a person by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. That has been shown it does not work with young children. That it is very important to point out skin color. Again, the research has been done, but I told that lady I would not do race and story time for her. And again, just told her to think about it. So it's an excellent question, Mary. But again, like Carolyn said, the diversity part is key.
Mm-hmm. So I want to encourage everyone, because we're running out of time and I know we want to kind of cover just a bit more. I want to encourage everyone that does have questions or they want to see a storytime planner, reach out to me and I will share with you, so many. I mean, because I do story times for our local Head Starts. I have so many story times that I would love to share with you that will talk about diversity, but also give you ideas about physical literacy and mindful moments, all right? So the next slide we're gonna hop to, and boy, Mary, I wanna talk to you more. So can you go forward for me, Melanie? So here we are with privilege. This is where I am going to share with an audience of my peers some privileges that I've indulged in, but not really known that I indulged in them. So for most of my life, I have been encouraged to pass for white. My mother would tell me, please don't lay out in the sun for too long. We don't want your skin to get too dark. So I never really kind of understood what she was saying to me. I lived a very sheltered life, I suppose, compared to my parents. And it was only when I was changing my daughter's last name to my maiden name, and my mom, objected to it. And I said, why do you have a problem with this? And she said, well, your daughter's going to have an easier life if she has that Anglo-Saxon last name. And it dawned on me, oh my gosh, these are the ways that my mother has tried to protect me from racism. I can also share with you that another privilege that I've enjoyed is that I have never walked into a store with a sign that read, no Mexicans, no dogs. Nor have I witnessed strangers directing racist remarks towards either of my parents. So these experiences were common in my father's childhood. All right. So by sharing that with you, I immediately feel vulnerable and uncomfortable. And when I try to shy away from doing this, I have this support system. I have these allies that tell me, no, Carolyn, it's important that they know this. All right. So at this point, in my career, I cannot pretend that this is a tidy and resolved problem. All right. And so as we work to identify our biases, or we acknowledge what our privilege is, we have to be uncomfortable. And some of us are going to walk very slowly towards our privilege or our uncomfortableness, and some of us are going to run towards that uncomfortableness. So in this, this artist that I found on Instagram, she really says it well. Like, you'll see the little boy at the very bottom of the hill, and he only has one privilege, and that's the straight privilege. No, that's the able-bodied privilege. And then the friend that he's pushing, he only has two balloons. He has the cisgender privilege and the male privilege. And you can see the more privileges you enjoy, and maybe you don't even know that you are indulging in these privileges, like me. By the end, you're floating. I mean, things are much easier with privilege. And then you can go forward, Melanie. Because I feel like maybe at this point, again, another wonderful way for this person to talk about privileges, right? I have caught myself doing this. I have honestly, seen myself saying, oh, well, that's a choice. They're choosing not to do that. So, is it a choice? Is it a privilege? And then, Melanie, can you go one more for me, please? And then these are, how are we going to show up, to be or not to be? Are we allies? Are we not allies? How will we embrace diversity, in inclusivity and equity in our story times, or in our programs, or even in our conversations with family members or colleagues? And then, Melanie, go a couple more. So resources and sources, just really enjoy that. That is where we are dumping all of our inspiration and our allies and just sources for you. Now go one more for me, Melanie, please. At this point, we just want to, I think, answer some questions if we have more that are coming in. And I see. So with biases, if you have not done the project bias. No, it's called Project Implicit, and it's through Harvard.
That's it.
You really want to
spend
some time doing that, because it will really open your eyes to, how bias is showing up in your language and your expectation. And, I think that once we have this knowledge, it can help us predict, right? We have this awareness, this mindfulness of like, oh, I've done this before. It's like a knee-jerk reaction for me. And when we can predict it, we can practice prevention, right? We can try to say, all right, this is something that I do, but I kind of want to grow out of it. Because, these small changes that we do over time, they make big differences in not just self-change, but in like societal change. So if there are any other questions about navigating uncomfortableness during this, or, maybe kind of revisiting the question of, don't we need to be careful with acknowledging differences? Like, I would love to hear more on that. And again, we are holding the space so that we can explore this together as like a virtual community. Right?
Yeah, we are really running out of time, but please email us. God, sorry, I can't get it to go back to full screen, but email if you would like to sit in on a story time of mine. I am doing Zoom story times and have had people sit in just to see, or practice with me, even if you want to. You could do that, or like I said, email us for any questions.
So, okay, so I see the questions now. Thank you so much. So I believe the Black Lives Matter at School page was just a a window that was open on Melanie's.
That was me. Yeah, I apologize.
So at my library, we are we are really trying to create an environment where there are we're trying not to focus on one specific movement, right? We are trying to state, hey, racism is not okay. We are not, we want to interrupt it as much as we can. So I cannot speak to that. Do I believe in it as a, personally? Absolutely. But I may not be at liberty to say that at my job. I would love for you to email me so I can send you a template, and then I can maybe work with PCI as to how to get that into the handouts. So please,
Well,
do you
yeah. Yeah, thank you. I know we're reaching the end, you guys. Thanks for being here with us.
Somebody says, I'd like to see your story time.
Yeah, that would be
What is
me.
the
So
link?
just
Okay.
email me, and then I'll try to get you one. But I would prefer if they could just email me, which is, there it is,
You can
cvalencia
look right on the screen,
at
right?
highplains.us. Well, so Mary's saying, this causes problems on how all of us look at each other. So I think this is a bigger conversation, and it is, I mean, and see how we can disagree, but we can agree to disagree, but we can still do it civilly. Right. So yeah, so my series is coming up, and I am so happy that my foundation, the board of High Plains Foundation, has offered $2,000. My vision is to purchase book bags. These are family book bags, and our collection department does not have a specific spot for like family book clubs, right? So we're going to have to figure that out. But my vision is that I work with a cohort of 8 to 10 families. These families are diverse. They are biracial. They are affluent. They are from a marginalized community. They're marginalized community members, but there is it's just very diverse. And every month we do a 1-hour program where for the first 30 minutes, a librarian models how you talk to children about race. We do a story time. In the book bag, there are 3 diverse picture books, right? And then there is an adult nonfiction read. So when I pick one of the books for the, that first month, and I read it and I model to them how to talk about race, racial injustice with children, there's that modeling for the parents or the caretakers. And then the kids will go off, but somewhere still in the area, because we don't want to separate the families. But the kids will go off and do a craft while a trained facilitator, like somebody who does this for a living, will then connect with the parents, and we will talk about, like, let's say chapter 1 of this book. Now, the book that I chose was stamped, and it's actually, it's a teen book, because what I want to do is I don't want to overwhelm my parents with, academic, resources. I want this to be very approachable and non-threatening. Yeah, so
yeah,
I
we
hope
could go on. We really could go on and on.
And you know what, Mary, I want to say, Mary, thank you, because I feel like you opened my eyes.
Yes.
And I'm going to have a conversation with a group of folks that I'm working with on this Courageous Conversation series. I think somebody called it that, but the book bag, because he said to me, we have to make sure that we're on the same page, right? And I feel like this helped me see that point very clear.
Did you talk about your Courageous Conversation series?
Yeah, that's what I just kind of mentioned.
Right.
Like a family book club. But here's also the thing. I want to give that book bag away at the very end. I want to gift the family.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And so, maybe keep 2 book bags for our collection at High Plains so that families can check it out. And then in there have some kind of laminated sheet that gives them prompts, like, let's talk as a family about how chapter 2 made us feel, or how do you think the little girl in Not Quite Snow White felt when this happened, or So, you know, there's so many opportunities. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
being courageous and, you know, kind of at one point getting out of our own way and just, you know, doing it, or being
Willing to make this-
creative with those
willing
challenges.
willing to make mistakes and educate yourself.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, go out and enjoy the rest of the holiday.
All right. Thank you,
Yeah.
Carolyn and Melanie. Again,
Thank
an
you.
excellent presentation, and obviously everyone stayed till the end. So that's always a sign for us that they're interested. And thank you for being so asking so many questions and being involved so much. They're just great.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you.